Hey y'all, Kevin Hutchison here with Realty Austin, and I am grateful to be a part of Stories Inside the Man Cave, a homegrown podcast just like my own business.
You know, whenever we see a open like that, we know life is good. And when you can schedule or carve out 15 minutes of this guy's schedule, you know you're living life great. Matt Stepp of Dave Campbell's Texas high school football. He's an insider. Matt, is it fair to me to say that you pretty much live the schedule of a Texas high school football coach?
If you ask my wife that, I think she would pretty much agree. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a year-round thing for me. But the news doesn't stop. It's a almost 365-day deal. There's always something happening. Texas is a big state, and there's a lot of high schools that play football, and there's always something going on. So, appreciate you having me on, though, Sean. Hope everything is great down there in Austin.
Well, other than trying not to melt, it's great, as you know. But for Stepper, he is north of the border, so to speak, in Canada, home of where his wife is from in Canada, living the good life where it's a ton cooler, if you will.
I won't say the temperature. I won't rub it in, but it's a lovely day.
And he's living life great, and he deserves this more so than anybody because life as we both know it is about to change beginning in a week with August camps.
Yeah, so we'll be things will be rocking and rolling with practices starting Monday for a good number of high schools across the state, and then by the week after, everyone will be going, and then before long it'll be we'll be kicking off on the first Thursday night of the season here pretty soon.
I love it, and one of those Thursday games. I know it's not a big on the radar game. The Taco Shack Bowling here in Austin, Texas, is one of those games that really the season has started. And so diving into Steppers, he does a phenomenal job. And please go follow him along with everyone else because he's the guy that delivers tremendous amount of knowledge about high school football. I really respect all the networking and also all the relationships he has because those coaches are pretty special people. And follow him on Twitter at Matt_Stepp, STEPP 817. And he's a good follow too, delivers some humor, and the food across Texas does a phenomenal job.
It's a lot of high school football, but there's some other things sprinkled in, including ramblings about my Baltimore Orioles, who are actually having a great year this year.
Yes, they are.
We're having a great year, so it's actually fun to watch the Orioles this summer. I didn't talk about it too much last year because it was rough.
I don't understand it as far as baseball goes because Baltimore 70s, 80s, part of 90s, really solid organization.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, growing up, my dad was a huge Orioles fan. He was from Baltimore, and they were for about 30, 40 years. They were one of the best teams in baseball, and then kind of falling on hard times here recently, but it's good to see him playing competitive baseball again. It gives me something to do in July during the sports desert that we see in July. Not much going on.
Especially right now. When I think of the Orioles, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Brady Anderson.
Oh yeah,
that's who
Brady
I think
Anderson.
of.
Yeah, see, I grew up. Cal Ripken was my guy.
Yeah.
Growing up, I'm actually named after my middle name is Robinson, and my dad named me after Brooks and Frank Robinson. So because they were obviously huge parts of the Baltimore Oriole dynasty there in the 60s and 70s, they were his favorite players, and so he named me after Brooks and Frank Robinson.
That's an honor. Those are two of the greatest.
Two Hall of Famers
to ever play. Yep. That's phenomenal. The things you learn about Matt Stepp on a podcast.
That's right.
That's what we're here for. I love it. Hey, man. So one of we selected, he and I coordinated, collaborated, whatever word you want to choose through email. We were trying to think what could we get in a condensed version because you could go all different directions, but we're going to go top 3 in 3 different categories. There's always a revolving door, coaches moving up, some getting out of the business. But when you look at the current movement, I hate the word coaching carousel, but that's what it is. The top 3 coaching hires in Texas high school football.
That was a tough one.
Yeah.
We'll start locally. And this hire for you guys, I don't think was a huge surprise, but obviously with the legend Todd Dodge's retirement there at Austin Westlake, Westlake going with their defensive coordinator, Tony Salazar, to take over the program, one of the most highly thought of defensive coordinators in all the state of Texas, was a no-brainer decision for me. And glad that the school district, decided to go with Salazar. It's what Coach Dodge wanted. It's what he recommended. So it wasn't a surprise, but still, it's Austin Westlake. They've won they've won 3 straight state championships. They're going to be in the mix again for a 4th title this year. So you got to put that one up right there at the top as far as the coaching changes go. You go a little further south down the road on I-35 into the San Antonio area. One of the most storied programs in the history of high school football in Texas, Converse Judson. They missed the playoffs for the first time in over 40 years last year. They let go of their coach mid-season last year. Had an interim coach. They decided to go after one of their own and kind of get back to that Judson Rockets mystique. Hiring Mark Soto, who was the head coach. He was at San Marcos for a good period of time at San Marcos.
Did a great job.
Did an excellent job at San Marcos, was at San Antonio Johnson last year, led them to a 10-1 record last year. And he's a Judson alum. He's from that DW Rutledge coaching tree, wanting to get back to that kind of Rocket pride and Rocket tradition that they had there at Judson. So bringing Mark Soto in to take over there, that storied program there in San Antonio. And then you go a little further south down I-37 to Corpus Christi with Coach Phil Danaher, the winningest high school football coach in the history of the state, announcing his retirement due to health issues. He's obviously going through, with dementia right now. Just not fit to coach anymore. So he's going to, he rode off into the sunset and retired. And his longtime defensive coordinator, Steve Campbell, was able to take over there at Corpus Christi Cal Allen. So talk about big shoes to fill. He's filling, some huge shoes down there in South Texas with Coach Danaher's retirement. So to me, those are the 3 biggest coaching changes that took place this offseason. It was a busy offseason. There were, in UIL 11-man, we were well over 200 coaching changes.
Wow.
I think the last UIL 11-man job is getting filled tomorrow, if memory serves correctly. And then that will put a bow on the 2022 coaching carousel.
That's tough to follow, and you're there for a lot of them. It's funny you brought up Tony Salazar. I'm a board member on the Greater Austin Sports Foundation, and we had a speaking series. He and Coach Fenner from LBJ, and your name did come up. They were just in a personal conversation, and Tony. Just the way he speaks, it's he and Dodge are very similar in how they speak with such conviction.
Yeah, they're you can tell they're that Coach Salazar kind of comes from that coaching tree. He's not Todd Dodge, but there's a lot of similarities there, and I think he's a great fit there at Westlake, and I think he's going to do a fantastic job. The problem is that the bar has been set so high. He could do a great job this year. And if he doesn't win a state championship, there may be people who are like, what's going on here? Which I think that those fan bases that win big like that do get a little spoiled, and they forget just how hard it is to win a state championship in the state of Texas, especially in Class 6A. It's not, those things don't grow on trees. It's hard to do. And I think people lose sight of that sometimes, in view. Let's say Westlake goes 14-1 and loses in the state semifinals. That's an unbelievable season. But there's going to be some people who are griping and moaning that he's not Todd Dodge, and that's just such a bar. It's not a fair thing for anyone. That's why it's always tough to follow a legend.
It is, and that's a reflection of our society too.
For sure.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I remember, Tom Westerberg and Allen, after Allen went on their great run, after when Kyler Murray was there, and the next year after Murray graduates, they go 14-1 and lose to the Woodlands, I believe, at DKR in Austin in a state semifinal game. And then like that next weekend, some jackwagon goes up to Westerberg at the gym and basically told him, "Thanks for ruining my weekend," and he's just like, what am I even doing? And then, not long later, he left Allen and went to Barbers Hill because I think he realized it was time to go, because sometimes those expectations can get out of whack for sure, real quick.
Oh my God. And that's another, one of these days. I can't wait to have a conversation with you about certain parents, not any specific, but parents at the high school and youth sports level. Since the TikTok era dawned, they have been revealed.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they've shown their faces for sure.
Yes, they have, literally and figuratively. So there's so many players that you, especially, and other members of the media and I in my past have been privy or blessed or whatnot to have watched develop across this great state. It's so hard to narrow down to three, but since you have seen quite a few of these players, and not only in person, but have really done your homework on them, if you picking your top three this season to watch, who would they be?
So we'll start in my neck of the woods, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, with Denton Geyer, quarterback Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
I think, in Austin, Westlake fans will remember him well from his freshman year when he came in as a freshman to take over for Eli Stowers, who tore his ACL in the first quarter of that game. And he looked like a scared-to-death freshman. He was a 14-year-old thrown without any preparation hardly into the state championship game at AT&T Stadium against that Westlake defense. He looked like a freshman. He's all grown up, and the Westlake fans got to see him last year in the state championship game. He did a great job, and Geyer, really made that a ball game for about 3 quarters, and Jackson Arnold was a huge part of that. He's an Oklahoma commit. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the state of Texas. He won the Elite 11 competition, which that's a big time competition for quarterbacks across the country. He was named the MVP of the Elite 11, and Geyer as a team also going through a coaching change with Rodney Webb going to Highland Park to be the athletic director. Reed Heim, the defensive coordinator, is now the head coach there at Geyer. So they're going through a coaching change, but they've got Jackson Arnold ready to lead the offense. And I think Geyer, they're ranked pretty much in the top 5 in pretty much every poll. And I think they're going to be a contender to play for a state title. And Jackson Arnold is a huge reason why. Second guy I'd look at is down at El Campo, Reuben Owens, the running back, in my opinion, the number 1 running back in the country. A 4-year starter there at El Campo. He's a dominant force at the 4A level. You put a kid 6'2", 210, runs a 4.4 40, state long jump, triple jump, a contender, just a freak show athlete. But you combine that with the great vision, the strength, and the feel for the position. It's a unique combination. And you put him at the 4A level, he just puts up monster numbers for the Rice Birds offense. Look, he threw everyone a curveball. I think he was committed to Texas for a little while at one time. Threw everyone a curveball. Is now committed to Louisville. But he's a 5-star running back and fun to watch. And he's a player that he may not put up the huge numbers because he may be on the bench in a lot of his games by halftime. But he's a special player to watch. And he's a fun one. And the third guy will go to the defensive side of the ball down at the Houston area. Katy Pato, defensive lineman DJ Hicks, who. Mm-hmm. His dad's a coach. He was at Katy Morton Ranch as a sophomore, went to Allen as a junior when his dad got hired as a coach at Allen, spent his junior season at Allen in the Metroplex, had a great junior season, is now back in Katy at Pato after his father was hired as a defensive coordinator there with the coaching change that Pato went through. Pato won the state championship in 5A Division I. Their coach left, went to Pearland. Pato has a new coach. They hired a new defensive coordinator who just happened to be DJ Hicks' dad. So DJ Hicks is a 5-star defensive lineman, 6'4", 275, moves well, strong, great leverage, has a great feel for the position, can play any of the 4 defensive lineman positions, and is a real fun kid to watch. He's not committed yet. I think most of the experts have him as an A&M lean right now, but his recruitment is still wide open, and a player that really, I think, the top defensive player in the state of Texas.
That's solid work, Stepper. It's you balanced it somehow from each region of the state as best possible with 3 players. That's pretty impressive. In the
there's great players all over the state, and there's probably 10 or 11 guys that I could have easily named from different parts of the state as well. I mean, there's ironically, you go out to El Paso, it's one of the best crops of talent they've had out in El Paso in a long time.
Is that right?
Players all the way out there, and they've got 4 or 5. Usually El Paso produces 1 or 2 Division I recruits every cycle, and they've got, I think, 5 or 6 right now that are already committed. So that's a great. Even every corner of the state, there's great football players and great teams to watch.
You aren't lying. What's the name of that historic stadium in El Paso that has this beautiful view? I can't think of the name.
Jones Stadium, R.R. Jones Stadium. So that's we went out there this year. The Dave Campbell's crew last year went out there and did a game there. We we talked the coach into scheduling a Thursday night game, and so Tepper was able to go out there and check that game out, and it was a blast. It's one of the most beautiful stadiums in the country, and it's actually the LT was built in 1912. It's actually the first that they invented Friday Night Lights. That's the first stadium that got lights in the state of Texas.
Wow.
They did a Friday night football game back in 1928, I believe.
That's impressive. That there's a book. I can't remember the name of the author. He's from the Midwest. He included that stadium in this book. It's in the other room, but it's so far away. But you probably read it. I'll send you a picture of it after this. You've probably seen it. He did a great job of profiling a lot of these stadiums.
Any top 10 stadium list in the country, any list you see on Max Preps or any of those websites that are clickbait or whatever, or anything. Jones Stadium in El Paso is going to be listed. It is one of the most iconic stadiums in the country.
I can't wait. I can't believe 49 years old and I have not been out there. I've been to the Sun Bowl, but that doesn't count. That does not count.
And the Sun Bowl is a cool place too. I tell you what, that's an amazing place to watch a football game as well.
Carved into the mountain and the views. Oh my God. El Paso deserves more respect than they receive on a regular basis. So
it's a great city. It's just hard to get to. It's just a long way away, but it's a fun city. It's a lot to do.
Well, we'll propose a trip when it gets cooler. Non-football season for you. We'll go to Marfa, Fort Bend, not Fort Bend. I'm thinking Houston, but the Davis Mountains.
Alpine,
yes,
Big Bend.
God, there's so many beautiful
parts of the state.
If people would open their minds up. There's so many amazing places in Texas. So let's reel it back to the home base of this podcast, Austin, the ATX area. Mm-hmm. The high school football, to me, I'm not being biased in saying this, the metro, the level of play of high school football I guess you could say the quality of programs continues to rise. And if you were to say the 3 ATX area programs on the rise this season, who would they be in your opinion?
You're right about the Austin area. I mean, traditionally, especially at the big school level, high school football really gets dominated by the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the Houston area. I think the top tier of the Austin teams has shown these past 15 years or so. I think it kind of started with Westlake's rise there under Drew Brees, and it's kind of continued all the way through. Austin consistently has produced 2 to 3 teams every year that are every bit as good as the best teams in Dallas and Houston. They don't have the depth that Dallas and Houston have, but Dallas and Houston are also a lot larger metro areas. So by nature, they're going to have more teams and more quality teams. But the best in Austin can compete year in and year out with the best in any part of the state. I'm going to go a little. I mean, obviously, you've got your heavy hitters, Lake Travis, Westlake, Vandegrift, Cedar Park, those types of programs that year in and year out are contenders. I'm going to go a little off the board and give you a few teams that are kind of under the radar that I think could be in for an excellent 2022 season. I'm going to start with a program I mentioned earlier, just south of town, San Marcos. They got sent south in UIL realignment, so they're going to be off the board a little bit because they're in a San Antonio, because they get kind of thrown. Some years they're with San Antonio, some years they're with Austin, just depending on where the UIL needs them to fill a district. I'm a big believer in John Walsh. He did a great job at Denton Guyer. He's done good things at San Marcos since he got there. I think San Marcos is a team that could really surprise a lot of the teams in San Antonio this year. They're very talented. They've got a 3-year starter at quarterback. They're good up front. They're a team that's a tough district with Judson and Steele and those kind of teams in it. But I think San Marcos could easily be in the mix and surprise a few folks down there in that San Antonio district. So keep an eye on San Marcos. I'm going to go 2 teams that really benefited from UIL realignment. The first one is Pflugerville. I think Pflugerville High under Charles Taylor is going to be in for a big season this year. They're dropping down to Division II after being very competitive in a 5A Division I district. They're moving down into Division II. I think they're poised to challenge for a district championship. I think them and Belton, I believe it's District 12, 5A Division II. You look at that district's got a new school in Killeen, Chaparral. Waco University is in there. Pflugerville Conley is in there. Elgin is in there. So some programs that have not had a lot of success or new programs. I think Pflugerville and Belton are 1-2, the teams to beat in that district. So I expect the Pflugerville Panthers to really tick up this year and do some good things. So I think I talked to Coach Taylor there in San Antonio at coaching school. Very excited about the 2022 season. So keep an eye on the
Pflugerville
Panthers. And then the final team I would say is another team that really is going to benefit big from UIL realignment. That's the Gerald Cougars. If you're looking for like a team that you never expect to make the playoffs, I think Gerald is going to make the playoffs. Now, are they going to compete for a state championship or a regional title? No, not this year. But I think Marty Murr and his squad is poised to get into the playoffs, which for them, being a team that, they were on a 20-something game losing streak. I believe they were 2-8 last year. I think UIL realignment did them a lot of favors. I think they got a chance to sneak in and grab that fourth playoff spot in their new district behind Wimberley, Navarro, and Lago Vista. But I think Gerald is the team to beat for that fourth spot. And for them to get into the playoffs as a 4 seed, they may not win a playoff game. They may not even be competitive in a playoff game. But for them to get into the playoffs is a huge step forward for them. So keep an eye on Gerald. I expect them to make a big leap forward as well.
So you listed 2 programs by 2 men. Coach Walsh, as you know all too well, a lot of people do, what he did at Benton Geyer. And then, of course, Marty Murr, he stepped out of East Texas, was a head coach at Alto. There's
San Augustine. He had some great teams at San Augustine. Pushed Refugio to the limit a couple of times. They had some great teams.
That's amazing. I got to ask you this. So when you're driving down I-35, just in 1 year, I don't know if you paid attention because it's hard to look. When you're going through Gerald, in a 1 year's time, housing developments on either side of the freeway now.
Well, you can see it coming. I mean, I've driven down I-35 many times, and even before it blew up, you can kind of start to see they started to put those gas stations and travel stops.
That's right.
There along I-35 first, and all that open land. I remember looking at it and going, "There's going to be houses here soon," because that growth from Pflugerville, Round Rock just keeps creeping north. I mean, eventually, Temple, Belton, and Austin will just be merged into one area. It'll all be merged. You won't even be able to tell the difference unless you see a sign.
One big slab of concrete, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Being a veteran, VIP alumni of Stories Inside the Man Cave, you know how we in this story. So in this episode, with the Man Cave story brought to you by Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency. Do you have a Man Cave story possibly from that beautiful event, the Texas High School Coach Association in San Antonio? Anything come to mind, or maybe in your travels recently?
So I would say the best story I have is probably from 7-on-7. We were down in College Station. It's 7-on-7 is one of the few times along with coaching school that all the media, or a good chunk of the media from across the state, is in one place. And so I think some of the most fun I had at 7-on-7 was not being miserable in the heat watching 7-on-7 but we would all get together. We all kind of coordinated amongst ourselves to stay at this one particular hotel. And we would all just go down to the lobby of the hotel and work for 3 or 4 hours and get our work done and order pizza and have, people who have adult beverages would have their adult beverages, that kind of thing. And it was about 30 of us just down there. It was a big, just working session in the lobby of the hotel. And just a lot of fun just to catch up with everyone. And it's kind of, for me, the state 7-on-7 is really the start of the football season, because then coaching school is in a couple of weeks, and then you leave coaching school, you got a couple of weeks, and then the season starts to kick off. So those times are a lot of fun, just to hang out with all the media and just catch up and swap war stories and, talk about press box food and places to eat on the road. And you know how it is. We all get together. We just have a good time. So that's probably my fun man cave story from this off season.
I love it.
Those working sessions, we just took over the lobby of the hotel, and it was all the media down in the lobby of the hotel.
That's good times. It's a brotherhood. It's a fellowship. It's you can't describe it unless you've been a part of it or been on the road and taking part of those moments.
It's a relationship business, just like anything else. And we not only do we have to develop relationships with the people that we cover, but also our peers, and because you never know, if I need something in an area, there's a media member that I can pick up and call and ask for help, because I've, hopefully cultivated good working relationships with those people. And I would do the same for them.
And I would do the same for you. If there's any, I know I'm not as connected as I once was, but I know I owe you quite a bit. And you do a lot for this, the great state that we live in high school football, the greatest game.
Appreciate it. Opinion. Thank you. So I would agree with you.
Oh, my God. So, favors are on the ledger for the Matt Stepp of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Keep up the great work. And please, please give this guy a follow It's well worth it. I'm not just saying that to promote just because he came on, but you're better off having followed this guy on Twitter.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Brother, enjoy the rest of your vacation. The greatest time of year is about to happen. And for the two-time veteran VIP of Stories Inside the Man Cave, that being Matt Stepp, and for the OG Man Cave boys, that being Hardball Harge, Big Mike, and Coach Mo, we are out.